The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh, got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throbbing my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Speaking podcast coming to you Sunday morning, November 3rd, 2024. I cannot believe it is almost here. We are officially 2 days away from what many believe is the most consequential election, certainly in my lifetime. Now, we hear that, but of course I heard the same thing 4 years ago with Biden and Trump. I heard the same thing 8 years ago with Hillary Clinton and Trump. I've even heard that a couple of times during the Obama years. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying is that the media and people make things bigger than they really are. But I do feel like with this election, this is definitely, I will say in my lifetime anyway. I can't speak for anything before 1980 because I wasn't alive in 1980. I wasn't alive before 1980, obviously. I was born 1980, actually. But in my lifetime, I definitely think this cycle, and I think the reason why it's the most consequential for me is because, especially given in the last 2 years, when you consider all that's happened during this cycle, because I always say the cycle starts after the midterms. When they get past the midterms, which is 2 years ago, is when really election season starts, because then you start having people declare to run for president in the primaries, whether Democrat or Republican, even the third party. You have the laundry list of people who start doing debates throughout the first part of that year. So in 2023, of course, you had Republican debate, of course, in debates and primaries, which had 11 people. You had Ron DeSantis, you had Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Doug Burgum, Asa Hutchinson, Mike Pence once upon a time was a part of that. I'm trying to remember who other ones were. So it's about between 7 and 8 or 10 actual nominees that declared to run president. And of course, Donald Trump, who did not debate, but he really didn't need to, although I would like to have seen that. But I mean, why bother if you already own that party? So we're here. We're 2 days away. And then we've had 2 assassination attempts. We've had Joe Biden, the president, the incumbent president, who was initially running for re-election, leave the race. The Vice President Kamala Harris is now taking the lead in the ticket. You've seen so many different angles and narratives and stories, and it's just, we're here. We're 2 days away. And it's so important that, every Tuesday, we do, not here, but I'm a part of the podcast, the Huddle Up podcast. I do every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. It's so important that we're not doing a show that night, because myself, of course, and Big Jim, James Neese, the host, him and I are both invested heavily in this. And it would be a distraction. I know for myself, I had told him about 2 months ago that I'm just giving you a heads up now. I don't know if I'll be available or even be, somewhat dependable to be, on the show, because I'm gonna have my iPad here next to me during the show while the returns are coming in. I'm gonna be. I can't guarantee I'll be as focused on the show because I'll be so focused on the iPad. and watching the debate returns. So he said, yeah, he felt the same way too. So they're moving the show to Wednesday night, which is smart, obviously. And hopefully by then we will know the winner of the election. Hopefully we'll know Tuesday night. But we're here 2 days away. I already voted. I voted early. I voted on Friday with my wife. It was we waited about 30 minutes ish in line. And it's weird because I've been voting for I'm 44, so I've been able to vote for 26 years now. And I voted pretty much. I voted pretty much in every single election possible in terms of, I might have missed a few here and there, in my early 20s, but for the most part, I voted in every election, including midterms. And it's weird because every time I early vote, every single time I'm going on a 20-year sample. Every time I go early vote, there's always a line. There's always a long line. There's always either a 30-minute line, which is this past Friday. I know 4 years ago when I voted in the 2020 election, I was in line for over an hour, possibly almost 2 hours. And I remember one time I think 2012, I was in line for like almost 3 hours in line. And every single time I early vote, I'm always in line. And yet, when I do go vote the day of elections, historically, I'm almost always out in 10, 15 minutes tops. Whether it's the midterms, whether it's the general election, I'm always in and out in 10, 15 minutes. So it's just weird. Like, and look, granted, I'm not complaining about early voting. I'm not complaining that, oh my God, I wait in line. Because there's some part of me that also likes being out there with people in line because I think, and also it's not egregious, of course, but I'm that kind of I'm the nerdy guy who loves seeing democracy in action. I know we saw that caption I put on my socials after my wife and I voted on Friday. I love being around in the energy, feeling the energy, people in line talking about politics. If sometimes they wanted to, seeing not you didn't see that this time around, but I know in 2020, for example, in the same location I voted at the library nearby here. You had a bunch of Trump supporters on one side of the parking lot. You had a bunch of Biden supporters on the side of the parking lot. But the cool thing was that even when they were, obviously debating and not debating, but just like against each other, candidate, they got along. They got along. They still were very friendly and cordial and whatnot, which goes to show that, despite what parties wants to make up of us as people, we have more in common than we have different. Yes, the bad apples on both sides. Yes, they are. But I still think, and my life is a pure example of that. I've had people on this podcast. I mean, I just had a podcast, our Thursday show we just did, the last episode we just did. We had our friend of the show now. He's been on a couple times now, Dean Simpson, who's a Republican, who was a Trump supporter. And we had an hour-long conversation on the podcast. And, we have a nice cordial discussion, no arguing, and we had some differences on certain things, but we had a good conversation. He's a good dude. At the core, he is a good man. And I know I'm friends with a lot of people on that side of the aisle who are good people, and I'm also friends with people on the left side who are good people as well too. So I don't like this generalization of like, oh, if you support MAGA, you're a bad person, and if you're a blue, vote blue matter who person, you're a bad person. I don't subscribe to that. I'm sorry. And I know it's people gonna say, well, you're naive. Well, too bad. Go fuck yourself. But yeah, early voting went down, got done. I punched my ticket. You guys know who I'm voting for. I voted for Kamala Harris, and Tim Walz for president. And that's just that. I have more agreements with her on policy than do with Donald Trump. I also told you guys that with Donald Trump, him trying to overturn an electoral scheme, of course, in 2020, him still not accept the results of the election, him trying to overturn the Constitution, terminate the Constitution. Okay, those things are disqualifying. If Joe Biden did the same thing too, if Barack Obama did the same thing too, if George W. Bush did the same thing too, if Bill Clinton did the same thing, you name it, that is automatically disqualifying for me. End of discussion. That simple. There's no debate for me. There's no conversation in that. So, and that's how I feel. But we're doing this today, and you see title on this episode, the most single influential politician of my lifetime. I'm talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump. I was reflecting on this, and I think I've mentioned this a couple times actually on the show in the last couple of weeks about him and his influence on the politics as a whole. He really is the most single influential politician of my lifetime. Think about 2015 when he declared to run, coming down that escalator, the golden escalator at Trump Tower. And I remember the commentary back then. I was 35 years old. I remember the commentary back then. It was like, oh, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be, come on, this has got to be a joke. Like Donald Trump. And granted, he did run for president back in 2000, under the Reform Party, but then it didn't get anywhere, But now he's running as a Republican. And I even thought, okay, let's be real here. He's probably doing this for attention, and then he'll leave the race probably. He probably won't get any support. He'll get some support, but then he'll come and go. You've seen people do this, come and go. And then you start seeing the primaries, and he's getting these like numbers are positive in his end. And he's like beating Ted Cruz, and he's beating down Jeb Bush. And then the debates back in, it's funny. I've been watching some of his old debates back in 2016. Against Jeb Bush and against Jeb Bush and little Marco Rubio and lying Ted Cruz and I gotta tell you, like I wasn't a Trump fan, but I saw the appeal right away. I was like, oh, I get it now. I totally get it. And one of the reasons why I never get mad at MAGA or completely mad at MAGA, although sometimes on social media I might get a little like testy sometimes because some of the things are just egregious. That's mostly for commentators though, who try to grift on this thing. It's because I totally understand where they're coming from in a sense. Especially in 2016, the grievances and their distrust of the government. And it's not to say that Donald Trump is going to heal that for them, or maybe, but Donald Trump was a symbol of their grievance, and that's why he had an appeal. That's why when in 2016 he's beaten down all these typical Republican politicians who were just milquetoast as hell. Jeb Bush, who was the favorite to win the nomination that year, and he's knocked out of the paint early. Knocked out Marco Rubio, knocked out Ted Cruz, and even then I'm thinking, okay, he won a nomination, I get that, but he can't possibly win the election against Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, of course, I won't say the standard bearer, but the Clinton name is iconic in Democratic circles and certainly national circles. And Bill Clinton was at that point still a very popular figure nationally, and still he beats Hillary Clinton. A lot of it because Hillary Clinton ran one of the worst campaigns. No, let me rephrase that. Hillary Clinton ran the worst campaign in the history of American politics I've ever seen for someone on a national stage. The entitlement, not campaigning in Wisconsin and the blue wall states, taking that for granted. And Donald Trump ran a very brilliant campaign, and he's not a populist, but he ran a very populist message that appealed to people who felt dismissed by the Democratic Party or by people in general. Yes, he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, and I get that. But that the name of the game is 270. You gotta get to 270. That's the name of the game. Come hell high water, 270. And I know it's gonna piss off people who are pro and who are anti-electoral college, and I get that. And I see the argument. And by the way, this is not a conversation with Dean on Thursday about that. We actually went into that a little bit about the electoral college and our opinions on that. But then he goes and he wins the election, and he changes the entire scope of politics for 4 years. It was the most polarizing 4 years in the history of America. And even then, and it's funny, you can argue that Donald Trump, in some weird ass way, influenced this podcast and how it changed. You gotta remember too, also, when I've been doing this show 13 years, and this was mainly a sports show, and it's still pretty much the standard of the show is still sports. We still talk sports. I would say 78% of the time on this podcast. You might get a special show here on culture and a segment here on culture and some politics here and there. But for the most part, it's still a sports show. But back then, prior to 2016, this was solely a sports podcast. And you can argue that Donald Trump being in the political spectrum influenced my desire and want to talk about politics on my podcast. Now, not to say I'm talking about politics in the same way where like I'm talking about policy and stuff, but just it was so fascinating. And even to the 4 years from 2017 to 2020, it was so fascinating having him as a commander in chief. It was by far the most polarizing 4 years in the history of politics. In history we've ever seen behind the seal. And then the influence he's had on culture, good or bad. You know, the lane he's created in podcasting, the lane he's created in commentary. There's a lot of people who have made a lot of money just on the fact that Donald Trump is in this political spectrum. And I'm talking about people who are pro-Trump and anti-Trump. The fact we have a never Trump demographic or lane is bonkers to me. You know, never Trumpers, of course, are people who are traditionally conservatives, Republicans, but don't like what Trump stands for. You know, talking about the Lincoln Projects people, talking about Tim Millers, talking about all those folks. You know, that's Trump's influence. This is why when I say he's the single most influential politician of my lifetime, this is what I'm talking about. And then he loses in 2020, we're thinking, okay, well, he's gone. Maybe this goes away, and we're done with Trump. And no, it doesn't go away because it's still the blowback of some of the things he did in his 4 years, him going through some of his legal situations, of course, and he just won't go away. And in fact, I don't even think this is an argument at this point now. Donald Trump right now is the most popular he's ever been at any point in his 8-9 years being in the political spectrum. Like his approval rating, look, he's not popular. He's not 50% popular. But he's inching closer and closer. You know, I think right now his approval rating. I think right now is his approval rating is like around 45%, 44%. Which for him, given where he's been at and what he's just where we're at now, 8 years later, is astounding. It's astounding. It's crazy that this guy is still viable as he is. And that's a credit to him having a pulse on the electorate. You know, it's a lot of things that kind of play that. Also, in my opinion, Democrats not, you know, underselling the support and underselling policies and whatnot. So, yeah, Donald Trump is the single most influential politician in my lifetime, without question. You know? So, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, too, also. If he wins his election on Tuesday, I think if you thought the first 4 years were polarizing, these next 4 are going to be even worse. Because now you have no guardrails now. Because he's not facing the prospect of running for election again in 2028. You know? He'll have clear rail to do what he wants to do. You know, a lot of folks, you know, credit, you know, they say that, well, Trump was able to, we were able to control Trump because you had enough people in his cabinet to keep things sane. You know, yes, he stretched the guardrails a little bit, but at the same time, we were able to keep things relatively within control because of the people who were around him. Who's to say now he'll have those same people around him? Well, firstly, I don't think he will because a lot of people have since abandoned Trump, you know, because of principles. You know, the John Kellys, obviously, Mike Pence, a lot of people who worked with him are now not only have not working with him anymore, they're not even endorsing him. Former 5-star, 4-star generals who were under Trump decided to not. Former chief of staff, you know, people like that. You know, so who's to say how Donald Trump will operate in these next 4 years? That's the $1 million question. But yet, he is the most popular right now he's ever been by virtue of ratings, by virtue of data. And his chance to win this election is very, 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 very clear. Like, he has a very good chance to win this election. Like, I would say coming in to an election day, he has a better chance of winning this cycle than he had against Hillary Clinton. His odds are very high. Well, I don't say very high. At least 50-50 chance to win this election. He wasn't that in 2016. He wasn't that in 2020. Joe Biden was a heavy favorite to win 2020. So what happens next is going to be very fascinating. So we shall see. We got 48 hours to go. A little over 48 hours before we find the results. I'd hope anyway. And this has been a conversation. So my wife is, she's not someone that's very political necessarily, like day to day. She has her leanings and whatnot, but we do talk politics personally, of course. She's more left than I am. I'm more of a moderate center left guy. She's definitely left. And but every so often she'll, especially every 2 years. I say 2 years because of the midterms. Midterms matter to us also in our family. We vote midterms also. She gets very vocal around this time of year, especially in these last 8 years. When it was the Obama, because we first started dating in 2006, and the first time we ever voted together was 2008 for Obama in 2008, and we were on the same side, of course. Okay, but even then, I was still kind of on the fence at the time until Sarah Palin came with John McCain's running mate. But that's neither here nor there. But she would still get vocal, but not crazy. These last couple cycles, she's gotten more vocal about her position because of some things that have happened. Certain policies that are now in effect could affect what she believes in. Most notably women's rights. So she's gotten very, very vocal with me about certain things, even on things that we agree on. And she's of course worried and whatnot that what could happen if Trump wins. And it brought up a big question about can you have a relationship with someone who has different political positions? And I bring this up because when we first started dating, I was as Republican at the time, but I was already starting to question the party at that point. This is the 2006, of course. She was, again, she's still the same person. She hasn't changed. She's still left. She was always left even back then. And I have moved more left as I got older. A lot of times they say it's different when you get older, you move right, but I've moved more left. I was raised in a very strict Christian home, so a lot of my conservative background is more so embedded in the church. As I've gotten older now, I don't go to church as much as I used to. I haven't gone to church at all in a long time. My beliefs didn't change, but certain things have become more broader, and as a result, it's actually, I guess politically speaking, moved me a little more to the left. Not far left, but left. And so we've been able to discuss things, but the things still get tension. There's still tension in my house about certain topics in the house. So is it possible? Anything is possible, but at the same time, people say, don't bring up politics. Don't, you shouldn't, talk about politics and religion. But the thing is, though, those things are core. Those are become core value conversations you have with people. To people anyway, they define your core values in a lot of ways. Politics is important. Like people say about politics and sports. Yeah, but you can't. It's almost hard to separate politics out of sports and politics out of life because politics is our life now. Because these things are the decisions that we made on Capitol Hill affect how we operate, what we do, and what money decisions we make in the future. So, to me, it's no longer viable to say, well, politics doesn't matter. No, it does matter. It does matter because you are impacted immediately, not even realizing it. And in fact, you don't know about it, makes it even worse. Then you ask the question, why this happened? And you didn't pay attention. I'm gonna play a clip from Fox News. Jesse Waters is he is a host of one of the shows there. I don't know what the name of the show is, but anyway. But this exact topic came up about could you be with someone that has political views than you. And this came up in terms of he hosts The Five. That's the name of the show, The Five. And this came about whether or not his wife, what would he do if his wife voted for Kamala Harris? Of course, he's a Trump supporter. If is voting against your husband as bad as cheating? Here's his take.
If I found out Emma was going into the voting booth and pulling the lever for Harris, that's the same thing as having an affair. That to me,
Oh my God! Let him finish. Go, Jesse. It's our day.
That violates the sanctity of our marriage.
Preach on. Yes.
What else is she keeping from me?
Exactly.
What else has she been lying about?
Why would she lie to you? Have you threatened her? Why would she lie to you?
Oh, they want me to tease.
Why would she do that and then vote Harris? Why would she say she was voting
He's
Trump
not the problem.
and then voting Harris? And I caught her, and then she said, I lied to you for the last 4 years.
Admit you intimidated.
It's over, Emma. That would be D-Day.
That I don't know, man. What could a relationship survive lying? It's funny because the reason I brought this up because there was a time recently where my wife thought I was going to consider voting for Donald Trump, which is comical to me, given my commentary on things, because I'm very moderate, because she, quote unquote, I don't hold Trump to the fire in the same way I hold Democrats, which I think is complete bullshit. I've always been critical of Trump in this podcast. And I've gotten this commentary from my father. Last Sunday, we had my dad and my brother on the podcast. You guys should check that out, of course. A great conversation, 2-hour conversation. And first hour conversation was about politics and the election. And we were talking about, after we had the conversation, and he might have said it on the show too also, because my brother also is very much a moderate like I am. Probably more moderate than I am. Probably even more moderate, mostly because of the economy. Because it doesn't work also, especially. And my dad's told me and told us that, you guys sound like a bunch of right-wing Trump supporters. Like, why would you say that? And granted, I see where it's coming from, because I know there's a lot of like wear and tear from people who leave the left, go to the right, and whatnot. It's a grift or it's real, whatever. Because certain commentary and whatnot. And I've gotten that same comment from, not to my father, but from my mom. I got it from my wife multiple times, from many close friends of mine who listen to my commentary on the podcast, who hear me critical of Democrats and the left, that they start thinking, oh, well, you're always critical of Democrats, not critical of Trump, which again, I think that's bullshit. I think I've always been critical of Trump, if not more so than anyone. But I'm also critical where I need to be critical. There's nothing wrong with criticizing your own. Because one of the things I always say, I can't say my own, because I'm not even a Democrat. But I don't subscribe to just silo thinking that, okay, it's my side, so just make sure they're good. And no, I don't do that. I'm never going to change from that. But that being said, could I be with someone with the same political differences? Yeah, you could. It might be harder. I think it's harder now because of the climate. Because what does, in the case of Donald Trump, what does Donald Trump represent to you or to people? And I can't answer that question. And people have different views on Donald Trump, and so some people look at Donald Trump as freaking Hitler, like, which is I think personally is a little bit much, but neither here or there, But people have different ideologies and different ideas of what Donald Trump is to them. So I think it's possible, but it's harder now. I would have said maybe, if you were a George Bush conservative, maybe you can do that and have a relationship with someone who was a Bush conservative or Romney conservative or McCain conservative. That's more valuable. In the Trump era, it's a little harder. And again, this is another reason why he is the single most influential politician in my lifetime, because he is impacting so much stuff down to the floor. So, it's possible. I don't think it's something you see as often, though, because especially people who love Trump, the people who love Trump love him, and people who hate Trump despise the guy. And to be influential like that, you have to be, both love and hated at the same, not, I can't even say equal measure, but same kind of volume, if you will. So, I don't know. But yeah, it's hard to do that. It's hard to be nice with someone that has the different political ideology. I mean, polarizing. Anyway, so okay. Before I get out of here, normally around this time of year, I always make a prediction on the election, and people have asked me, whether off air, on air, who I think will win the election. And my position right now is that I am not making a prediction this time around, because I've been saying for weeks now, I just don't have a feel on this election. It's gone back and forth. Like when Kamala entered the race in July, she surged, and the surge continued when she picked Tim Walz, and then through the debate, and then after a while, that surge came to a halt, and then Trump made up ground again. The polling is the polling, obviously. By the way, there's a new poll that came out last night that there was an Iowa poll that is an A+ pollster that has Kamala in Iowa, a state that she's not even predicted to even be close to winning, up by 3 points. And this is a poll that's very reliable. So on one hand, you hear a lot of Trump momentum, and then you've seen all of a sudden early voting returns coming in, and it seems that what the assumption is that most of those are Kamala voters, Democratic voters. And I don't know. I don't have a feel for this. I really don't. I really don't. I had a better feel. I had a feel in 2020 because of COVID that Joe Biden was going to win, and he did. Even in 2016, even though I got it wrong in 2016, I gave Trump a better chance than people getting credit for. But in 12 and in 8 and even in 4, I thought Bush would win against Kerry, because I just thought people thought that it was a mistake to try to change the course of being a war, and Obama's man, of course, in both elections. I just don't have a feel about this election. I just don't. And I think her also cozying up with Liz Cheney recent weeks has definitely played a part in the polling being stale for her. But she's gotten some decent polling the last couple of days now. But I don't know. So I can't make a prediction on this. The states I'll be watching, and the states, obviously the blue wall states are the key, but the state I'm really, really fascinated about this cycle is North Carolina. And the reason why is that, so you have a governor's race there, for example, and Mark Robinson is the Republican nominee for governor. Now, he's not winning, for the record, okay? He was already down 8 to 10 points before all this stuff came out about him, being a black Nazi and porn sites and stuff, and which I don't even think he's denied yet either, honestly. My question is, does he bring down the Trump numbers too also as a result as well? North Carolina also is a very changing demographic. Like there, it's changing to more moderate to even more left state in a sense. So a lot of that was a state that was very much of a lean red state. Obama won in 2008, but it has been trending to purple now. It's a swing state now. Trump won that by what, a point, in 1.2 points, I think, in 20, won it by maybe 2 points in 8. Like I said, that's a gettable state for Democrats. So North Carolina to me is the most intriguing state. Obviously, all eyes and all 19 electoral votes are on Pennsylvania. That's obvious. That's the be all and all. Whoever wins Pennsylvania is likely wins the election. And so because of that, that's the coup de grace. But for me, outside of PA, of course, Michigan and Wisconsin, that's obviously important. Although I'm confident she's going to win. I'm actually confident now she'll win Michigan. Wisconsin's a little more of a toss-up, I think. But PA and North Carolina, those are the two that are locked in. I'm also curious how she'll do in Nevada. I don't think she'll win Arizona. The polling has not really gone her way in the last 2 months, honestly. The polling has pretty much favored Trump. Joe Biden did win Arizona in 2020, but that is a very, very purple state. There's some polling that suggests that Florida could be in play. I disagree with that. I think Florida is not going to be in play for her. I do, but the thing is, even if she loses Florida, even if she loses Iowa, which that poll came out, I said a while ago, the thing to pay attention to more than anything else is the margins. Okay, so Trump wins Florida, but by how much? That's the question. If he wins by less than 3%, then there was some gains there. If she loses Iowa by less than 5%, there was gains there because Trump won that by pretty handily in 2020. So a lot of little things to look at overall, because no matter what he says, even if Trump loses on Tuesday, Donald Trump has changed the face of politics, the way we talk about politics, and the absolute face of the Republican Party for a very long time. Because even if Trump is gone, the GOP now is on, I will say it, the GOP right now might be on close to equal footing with the Democrats now. But this is all about the data. So we'll see. Anyway, I hope you guys go out and vote. Vote for your candidate. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I'm going to go now and watch some football. So again, I am on Twitter, or what you call X, at EJ Christian 7. Of course, guys, check out the YouTube page, of course, at Earnest EJ Christian on YouTube. Other than that, we will talk soon. Get out there and vote, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you.